thumbs up. All right, we're going to get going. This is the breakout session for democracy. We're going to do elections, redistricting, and local news. And I have Deanne Finken with me. That's my co-conspirator here. So thank you all for being here. Wait, let me stop the share so you can see me a little bit better, and everybody that's in the session. As you can see from the introduction, we are down on issue chairs for democracy, and it's at a time when we really can't afford it. So I am stepping up to do some coordinating. If you'd like to work on democracy issues, I will give you from the teeniest little task to anything you would like to take on. So think of that about that as we go through the session today. We're going to go pretty quickly through the slides so we can get to questions and really have a conversation at the end. So hold your questions or put them in chat, and we'll catch up later. So as yeah,
we have a look at it. It says I would. There's a Lisa.
Great.
Yes.
Lisa Marie, we will take you up on that. Where are you from, Lisa Marie? Put your location in your name, and we'll take you up on that for sure. Email me. My name's on the first slide, but you can also just email me at my league address, amccaffrey@leagueofwomenvoters.org.
You should know that Cynthia Stewart is a wonderful mentor about this wild world of lobby teams. So you're not going to be left alone in any way.
Yeah, and I've got tons of experience. Happy to mentor people under the democracy space. As Cynthia, as you can see, has a ton of work to do coordinating and everything. So if you didn't know, the lobby team to facilitate our work, we're broken up into the 3 sections: the environment section, the social and economic justice section, that's where revenue is, and then democracy issues. And we've got local news, for obvious reasons, is under democracy. And so is Catherine All, and education, because there's been so much civic education work and stuff done in the democracy space as well. Yeah, so let's get going. I'll just share my slides again, or our slides. All right, just give me a thumbs up. Are you seeing the slides? Does that look okay? Yep. Okay, thank you. So again, we're elections, redistricting, and local news today. As you heard, it's going to be a difficult session, but I'd like to say that, especially in the redistricting space, but we're looking at these issues from a broader perspective than just this next session sometimes, and so be thinking of that broader section. Okay, here we go. So here's our 3 things. Elections is what we're watching for this session. Redistricting is kind of what is the campaign and the status of the campaign, and then Deanne's going to talk about her local news team and what they're working on. I'll make the point again. Democracy reforms work together. We have a global goal of equitable representation and a well-functioning democracy, and the National League puts the 5 maroon ovals kind of in their Make Democracy workspace, how they work together. And the local news, thanks to Deanne and her team's hard work, is now an overarching kind of topic to help improve our democracy space as well. So they all work together. Even though you may have a special one that you want to work on, they all work together. So here's what we're looking at for elections this session. But general, we're always trying to expand the voter base, right? So automatic voter registration has been key throughout Washington State's history. We're one of the best in the nation in getting people registered to vote at convenient times. We're continuing to push that barrier by getting people registered. In this case, we're looking at when they get become a naturalized citizen, or when they sign up for Medicare. Like, is everybody registered to vote when they're interacting with a government system that knows who they are and can automatically register them? Ranked choice voting, our friends that have been working on multi-member district and other election reforms are still pushing for how do we get more equity in election methods, and ranked choice voting is a key one to bringing in a lot more people into the election space, to get those third party candidates, to get minority candidates in there, not just racial minorities, but any other kind of minority in there. And there's two bills that are going to be floated again, which is our local options bill. So that means that local jurisdictions will have the option to do ranked choice voting. One of the challenges is getting people comfortable with the idea that, oh, you get to pick your favorite flavors of ice cream, and you can like chocolate and strawberry and Rocky Road. And that if you could rank them, that would be wonderful. So we need to get used to this kind of system, and doing it at the local level seems to be a great way. It's worked in other states. Great way to get people used to voting in this way, instead of our one district, one winner kind of voting that we're used to. The other one is the presidential primaries. If you remember, 4 years ago when you had that big slate of people on the presidential primaries, having ranked choice voting makes sense when you've got a big list of people in your primaries. And then we'll also be watching what's going on with the even year election only campaign. We know odd year elections have a lot lower turnout. And so it's something we will be watching. And the folks at Washington Voting Justice Coalition are the main advocates pushing for that. A really interesting change. Okay, so then we go on to voting rights. Our friends in the other breakout are going to be watching some of these very closely, because it's about a social justice issue, but we're looking at, it's called the jail voting bill. Essentially, how do you facilitate people who are currently incarcerated to continue to be involved and engaged in the community? We know studies say that if you're continually involved, then when you're released from those institutions, you stay and remain involved much more. Same with the voting rights restoration movement. We've made progress over the years of moving the line when people who are convicted of a felony lose their rights and then regain their rights. Very interesting space to work in. There's 2 states in the nation where you never lose your rights. Currently in Washington State, when you're out of jail, you can get your voting rights back. And that was a big win to move it from the point when you were no longer under state custody to the point of when you're no longer confined. And now we're trying to move it so that back further, so you can restore your rights even when you're incarcerated. And then the last one is a difficult one to say, but kind of in these times, kind of understandable. There's been a lot of effort to look at voter registrations and challenges to those who are on the voter rolls. And so there's an effort on looking at how do you tighten up that system so the challenges are more, they're more understandable, or there's less likelihood to be challenges, right? So get it right the first time, have people registered, have the rules around it very clear, so that things can move forward and people know if they're registered, they can go vote, that kind of thing. And then the third category under elections is kind of the cornucopia category. We're looking at some initiative reform. We know, given the conservative end of the spectrum had a very wealthy sponsor, that put a lot of initiatives out there. People are looking at, well, what does it mean to pay people to on the stand on the corner and sign initiatives? What does that whole initiative reform look like to make sure it's the will of the people moving forward, and that when we have initiatives that come forward, that the language around what that initiative is all about is representative of what the initiative is, and those sorts of things. So trying to make it a really people forward process, that as it was intended to be a way that the people can speak when their legislature or their government is not doing something they think they want done. And what does that look like? So if you want to dig into that, I would love someone to champion that cause as well. Our friends in social justice are also looking into civic engagement for people who are institutionalized of all sorts. How do you get people more involved? I don't know. This is a brainstorm right now. League of Women Voters chapters in different institutions, right? How do you help them become engaged in the process? And lastly, there's a movement about to have a new civic education day. We have an official day on the books that maybe Beth or somebody knows the name, but it's like the Temperance Day or something, and so it has this weird antiquated name that we don't like to advertise. So it'd be lovely to update that and get a civic education day on the books that we could celebrate and be, the Civic Education Day for Washington State. Any points of clarification on those before I go on to redistricting? Okay. We will move on. So many of you know, Allison Mavry, I am the issue chair for redistricting. I come about it honestly. My grandmother was one of the leaders of the first ever comprehensive redistricting in Washington State in the 1960s. And when I helped her write her book, I got really engaged in the topic and what was going on currently in our state and in our nation, and have been working at it since 2017. Many of the team members, we have a redistricting reform task force, and many of the team members are here today. Thank you all for your help on this. If you're new to redistricting, this is our current redistricting commission. It is an appointed commission with 2 Democrats, one from the Senate side, one from the House side, and 2 Republicans, one from the Senate side, one from the House side. And then they vote on a non-voting chair. Put in place in 1983 after my grandmother battled about redistricting with the legislators. It was ahead of its time in 1983, and now we're saying it's behind the times. We know there's a rise in people unaffiliated with either major party, and the geographic and racial distribution of our state is just growing. And so our whole movement is about, this is an outdated, bipartisan commission, and we're looking to improve upon that with models that we see in other states and that the research shows create more equitable legislature as a whole, and allows different people to become involved in the legislature, all that kind of good stuff. The 2021 commission had a pretty bad report card. They lost a Federal Voting Rights Act case, and we had to redo our districts. That's the Yakima Valley district case, Soto Palmer VRA lawsuit. Oh, that's rights, not fights. Oh my goodness, that's an old slide. Transparency was awful. We sat on a 5-hour meeting where they were kibitzing in the back rooms, among many other things. Despite a decent community outreach process, much of that testimony was ignored when they were drawing the final maps. So the prioritization of communities of interest of all sorts was really put lower in the thinking when they were doing that. Of course, we don't favor incumbents or parties, and we want a great, efficient process. So let's have staffing that's on board sooner and up front, and people looking at it all decade to know what the data is saying, and so we can get the communication out to the community as well. So we clearly deserve better, and that's our fight here, just to give your brain an idea of what something might look like. Here's Michigan's Independent Citizen Redistricting Commission, larger commission, all citizens, not political operatives, all chosen by a complicated process to weed out pure political actors and have citizens that are interested in doing what's right for the communities. So just to get your brain around what something could look like, and we're in the process now of trying to work out what model legislation might look like for the uniquenesses of Washington state. We've split the types of reforms for this commission because obviously the picture I just showed is kind of like the people and the structure, but there's lots of details under how this commission would do its work and what the requirements are for making the maps in which we get to decide the districts that we work in. So structure, the support I mentioned, accountability. We don't actually rank the criteria for our maps in law. We have lots of good criteria, but because it's not ranked, commissioners can kind of use one idea here and the other idea here as kind of the backstop for really doing what's best for parties in the end. And we see that in multiple examples where the community itself is not really considered and put highest when those criteria are not ranked. You can't have that accountability. Transparency, just key. When commissioners have to do their negotiation in public, it's a different kind of process. Challenging for sure. No doubt about it. Commissioners we've talked to who have gone through processes where they're doing their negotiations in public say how challenging it is. But then the people of the state have trust that those people are wrestling with the issues that they're considering and that they're concerned with. And so we're looking at what are ways in which you can strengthen the transparency in this kind of commission. And of course, just increasing the ways everyday people can have input into the process by just doing testimony and turning in written ideas and commenting on maps and all sorts of things, and making sure it's accessible in all sorts of ways. I have the translation and interpretation services. We'd love people to be able to testify in a language they're most comfortable in. But there's also many ways ensuring that meetings are at times that people that work can still participate. Meetings are, if they're in person, they're accessible from an ADA standpoint, Americans with Disabilities Act standpoint. All those kinds of things need to be considered when we're thinking about a comprehensive reform for this commission. Threw this slide in just to show the trend of unaffiliated voters, which is one of the key things for why too Dem, too Republican commission doesn't really represent our state in that case. And here's my slide to kind of demonstrate how we're stuck. We've definitely improved the process by taking out of the hands of the legislators themselves. It's one of the hardest things legislators ever had to do. And so we've taken it to these appointed commissioners. But it's clear the appointed commissioners report back to their corner of the legislature. But we're kind of stuck in this local minimum, and we've got to get ourselves up and out to get to a truly independent, people first kind of commission. And we'd love all of your help to help people understand why redistricting is so important and why this should be a movement and something that our legislators are talking about. We've tried a few different bills in the past that's not passed. We learned a lot from trying to push these through the legislature in terms of how important it is to educate our legislators on the redistricting process and the public at large on the redistricting process, how much the details matter when you come down to that really tense moment when they're trying to, the deadline's looming and they're trying to decide the final maps. The details on how the commission runs just really do matter. So we are pushing for our big, hairy, audacious goal of a constitutional amendment to change the Redistricting Commission in conjunction with a statute change that does all the details of that commission. This is huge. To pass a constitutional amendment, we have to go through our legislature, and then we have to pass it again at the general election by a majority. So that's, you may think the next redistricting cycle isn't until 2031, but that's why we've started, as soon as the other one was over, we've started thinking about how do we improve it for the next one. Because this is such an important issue, we need to educate lots of people so that we can influence our legislators and pass it at the general election. Many of you know that we had a federal lawsuit. This pea green map is the Latino Opportunity District that was created to ensure that Latinos in the Yakima Valley had a chance to elect candidates of their choice. It'll be interesting in this last election how the data spells out, but I wanted to make sure that you saw that a lot of the work that lobbyists, our lobby team does is really detailed behind the scenes in some ways of tracking legislation, tracking lawsuits in this case, to see what the changes are in the community, staying connected to this community, and understanding how voting registration is going, voting turnout is going, voters being able to elect a candidate of their choice, kinds of work. Lots of detailed work that includes a ton of community outreach and connection to organizations that are working all over the state. These are the towns that are highly Latino in nature, so that's why they were connected in this way. And then the blue is the Yakima Nation and its surrounding villages, which has historically been in concert with the Latino community vote as well. So putting those two together made sense. Redistricting is just a fun subject to work on because it deals with so many different kinds of issues and requires so many different kinds of people. So if you're someone who likes to do data, I'd love to have you working with data on me. If you're someone who likes to talk to people, we have things we need to do to get out and talk to people about it. If you're someone that wants to work on efficient and effective government stuff, or you want to be more on the social justice and equity side of things, redistricting kind of falls in the middle of all of those because it's so fundamental to our election process. So I encourage you to find out more and get involved where you can. We have local action teams led by people in the League of Women Voters, but include lots of different community members in lots of our locations around the state. You can ask your local action chair or president, or you can just email me and I can put you in touch with the people that are on our statewide task force that are working, that are the leaders of those local teams. Highly recommend you connect with people in your local area because we need to know those local needs in order to make the statewide map really reflect as many of the needs as possible. It's a really interesting puzzle to put together the needs of the small areas and make it a statewide solution. We're right now in the middle of a legislator education project. We've interviewed 28 people, half of them candidates, half of them now sitting legislators, and we need your help. We need people who are willing to meet and greet their legislators, especially if you're in a district with a new legislator who may be scrambling to come up to speed on so many issues. They really appreciate a heads up on certain things. And so we'd love to get coordinated and have you ask them about redistricting, how much they know about redistricting, what kinds of reforms they would support, so that we can both educate them and understand the state of where the legislators are thinking about redistricting. So please let me know if you are willing to add redistricting to another meeting you're having with a legislator, or have a redistricting specific meeting with legislators. So here's my action slide. If you think this process was not as good as it could be, meaning it was kind of messy and it sucks to have a federal lawsuit in our state, then don't get mad, get organized, right? Join a local team. We have a monthly state task force meeting that many people join to get organized. Take us up on asking your legislator. We have many people who are experienced advocates and lobbyists and can help you get prepared for any organization. I'll do a pitch for Speak Up School January 11th. We're gonna run a Speak Up School that will train you specifically on how to testify in front of a committee, in front of the next redistricting commission, in front of any legislative body at the local, state, or federal level. And then lastly, this is about networking. This is about any change is about getting other people to know about and believe in the change you want to see. So talk to 3 friends or family members, or kids and grandkids and who's ever in your network. Talk to them about the changes you care about. And I'm passionate about redistricting, so my family knows there's always going to be a redistricting conversation at the kitchen table, and we try to expand the network of people that understands these issues. All right, any points of clarification before we go to Deanne? Okay, and we'll save questions till the end. All right, Deanne is up.
Okay, thanks, Allison. Yes, I'm Deanne Finken. I'm the local news and democracy issue chair. We also have a local news and democracy action and education committee that we're welcoming members to join. My information is also at the end of this website. Many of us are still riding pretty high from this summer when National League adopted by concurrence the Washington position on local news and democracy. It was just a very exciting experience, and we had a wonderful demonstration of support. Next slide, please. And total vote was 859 to 63 in support of the local news and democracy position. But it's not a time to rest, because the local news decline continues. One of the biggest hits this year here in Washington, perhaps you've read about it, was the bankruptcy sale of Sound Publishing, which published and owned about 30 news outlets in the state. At the flagship newspaper, the Everett Herald, which is also one of the state's oldest newspapers, the new owners slashed the newsroom almost by half, and and reducing coverage throughout the area significantly. That the chain's other smaller papers, anywhere from Whidbey Island to the San Juans, out east in Okanogan County and down to Pierce County, the new owners, Carpenter Media of Mississippi, cut another 50 reporters and editors. So elsewhere, the difficulties have been not as public, but they continue. We talked with the publisher of a longtime family-owned daily. He said, quote, "We're desperate for any help we can get." The Washington Newspaper Publishers Association, which has 66 members, these are weekly publications, all of them print. They told us that a lot of their members are month to month in deciding how long they can stick it out. Month to month, wow. And of course, we all know why this is so troubling, right? Next slide, please, because all the studies are showing us that over and over, the local news decline means these issues, these strikes against democracy, fewer people voting, fewer people seeking office, less community engagement, greater political partisanship. We have negative outcomes with public health campaigns and higher government costs. And this is, again, we know that there are a number of factors contributing to the decline, but probably the biggest is, next slide, please, is the continued loss of critical advertising revenue that is going to big tech, social media. People are working on this. People really are working on this. And thanks to concurrence with the Washington State position, California League was able to support and testify in favor of two bills that were moving along pretty well in the legislature there. One bill, I think we need you to go to the next slide. One bill that California was looking at was a pretty conventional approach where big tech would have had to pay news outlets when they sold advertising on their sites next to news content that they had taken from, or that they take from news publishers, and that where they really don't fairly compensate the publishers. Another bill, this mitigation fee model, is pretty novel, and a lot of people have been excited about that. It would levy a fee on big tech, not only for their negative impact on newspapers, how they suck up all the digital advertising dollars, but it would have added a data extraction mitigation fee. To better explain that, think of a chemical plant that comes to town. The plant brings jobs and boosts the local economy, but it also might crowd the schools and the roads and pollute the water and dirty the sky. City officials in that community might then move to pass litigation fees on the chemical plant. So in the case of big tech and newspapers, you and I would be those affected third parties that not only is big tech taking the dollars from newspapers by way of the digital advertising they're sucking up, but they're getting information from you and I who might be using these the social media platforms, to communicate with friends about our preferences in all kinds of areas. So big tech can harvest that data unbeknownst to us. Well, I mean, we all know it now that it's going on, and really win a lot of information that helps them further their advertising and programming. So anyway, those are two bills that the State League was able to push for in California. At the last minute, the California governor came in with a settlement so that California news organizations will benefit, but only to a very small degree. And the problem with this settlement is that it only affects Google newspaper, Google. It does not include Meta or Facebook or and Amazon. Moreover, it's the reason we won't want to go for a settlement approach like California reached was the state uh, state coffers, taxpayers will have to kick in about $70 million over the next 5 years. We know that that can't happen in Washington um, because of the difficult budget situation. But there are people who are working on legislative approaches here in Washington, including members of the league. And it's complicated because there are a lot of factors we have to look at. We have to look at what constitutes, how do you write a bill that allows for compensation for legitimate local news websites, but does not compensate those that promote themselves as local news websites, but that they really are promotional tools for political parties or political gain. So it's all very complicated, but we have some very good news, and that's that Senator Marco Lias from the Snohomish area is looking very favorably about sponsoring legislation. We know Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck, with his project for civic health, supports robust local news, and certainly our incoming governor, Bob Ferguson, when he was Attorney General, supported legislation. In fact, really called for legislation to further B&O tax exemption for local publishers. So it's very complicated. We don't have anything to take to the bank yet, but we're working on it. And again, we were able to work on this because of the position we reached consensus on and then secured national concurrence. I think just to close, maybe I'm going to not have enough time to close.
I see that they're giving us only.
Founders established that local information about what our governments were doing was so important that they codified protection for it in the First Amendment. But little known is that they also provided huge subsidies, postal subsidies, that allowed newspapers to be distributed up and down the eastern seaboard for a penny each, whereas letters cost 6 cents to 25 cents to mail. Our position does not say government needs to fund local news, but it needs to provide support for conditions that allow local news to survive and thrive. Because the thinking is that local news, just like libraries or schools or public health programs, local news is a public good.
All right, we're just out of.
I think I'm not going to have time to talk about our media literacy efforts, but if you are interested in any of these, please consider emailing me at the address on the screen and let me know if you'd like to join
Looks like
us.
it's going to jump us out, so thank you, everybody.
Recording in progress.
Hello.